The ground shook underfoot, each tremor more violent than the last. The panic-stricken researchers struggled to keep themselves upright as they fled. Many were knocked over, losing their footing and careening to the ground face first. The ones who didn't soon felt the sickening crunch of bone under their feet, followed by the anguished screams of their fallen co-workers. Another colossal quake rippled through the ground, reverberating for miles. In the distance, a shadow streaked through the air, slamming into a towering mountainside. Though no larger than a man, the impact was catastrophic. A thunderous boom echoed as the cliff face gave way, a jagged crack slicing through the mountain, splitting it in two. From the observation deck at Site 0, two men stared slack-jawed as the rocky peak began to crumble before their very eyes. A torrent of shattered fragments cascaded downward in a thunderous roar. Within seconds, the towering summit was reduced to a chaotic tumble of loose boulders, obliterated in seconds by the sheer force of the impact. The remnants of the mountain formed a pile of rock and debris, burying what had been hurled at it underneath. It was a he, an anomalous humanoid who'd long been thought to be one of the most powerful SCPs the Foundation had ever encountered. A being who could literally change reality around him, bend the entire universe to his whims, had just been thrown at a mountain by something equally, if not more, powerful. A few miles away, standing ever vigilant at its post, the Gate Guardian's head lifted slightly from its usual bowed position, a movement that had not occurred in decades since its discovery by the Foundation. The faintest shift beneath the mountain's shattered remains had broken the anomaly's immovable stillness. The flaming humanoid anomaly locked its gaze onto what remained of the destroyed mountain as the hand of SCP-343 reached out from beneath it, and God climbed free from the rubble. While the exact records of the SCP Foundation have been altered, shrouding critical details in secrecy even from its own personnel, fragments of knowledge remain. What little is known suggests that the Gate Guardian was, at some point in history, encountered by an individual of unknown identity. At least, that's the official version. In actuality, this person's true identity is very much known, especially among the higher-ups within the Foundation. His name was Aaron Siegel. He was the man who created the SCP Foundation. During his initial encounter with what would later be designated as SCP-001, at least according to Dr. Clef's proposal, Siegel would hear a voice in his head. This often occurs whenever humans approach the Gate Guardian, with many reportedly hearing the word "forget." This directive cannot be disobeyed, as those who hear it turn away, compelled to leave the Guardian's presence without resistance. As they depart, they retain no memory of their encounter with it. It is possible that numerous civilizations throughout history have had encounters with the Gate Guardian. However, these were not likely recorded, thanks to them being made to forget. Either that, or they learned what happened should they disobey the Guardian's commands. However, this isn't what Aaron Siegel heard. The directive he was given was to prepare. This caused him to create an organization that would catalog and contain any supernatural, paranormal, or otherwise anomalous entities, artifacts, and creatures, in order to protect humanity from the serious threat that these anomalies posed. This organization would become known as the SCP Foundation, and the rest, as they say, is history. But not all history is recorded, and even if it is, it can still be forgotten. Site 0 was established just over 6 miles from the location that SCP-001 was guarding. From that distance, the almost 1,400-foot-tall entity could be clearly observed, as could the immense gate it stood in front of. A pastoral grove seemed to just lay beyond the gate's boundary, as well as several other creatures that were similar to the Guardian. It was quickly assumed that this was the Garden of Eden from the Old Testament of the Bible. If this was in fact true, this would make SCP-001 the angel Uriel. However, it has never confirmed this to be the case. Merely monitoring the Guardian from a distance wouldn't provide the answers to those questions, however. The SCP Foundation conducted several experiments to ascertain the exact nature of SCP-001, as well as determine its potential origin. Experiment Alpha saw a member of D-Class personnel approach the Gate Guardian. When the entity issued its command to leave, and the D-Class refused, The response was both swift and devastating. The Gate Guardian activated its weapon, a flaming sword designated SCP-001-2. In an instant, the D-Class was obliterated at the atomic level, leaving no trace of their existence. It also killed the entire research team who had sent the D-Class. Experiment Bravo involved sending a research robot towards the Gate Guardian. However, this was similarly destroyed. The same happened during the subsequent Experiment Charlie, resulting in the loss of 100 Foundation research drones that were all destroyed simultaneously. It appeared that the Gate Guardian was capable of striking in multiple directions, every direction, at the same time. The Foundation then launched a wire-guided missile at the Guardian during Experiment Delta. The projectile was not only destroyed when it reached just over half a mile from the Guardian, but the entire launch site and all personnel inside were destroyed by SCP-001 as well. Experiment Echo didn't end much better, when an intercontinental ballistic missile was fired from the Nautilus, a submarine located in the Indian Ocean. When the Gate Guardian retaliated, it caused the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake. Given the assumed connections between SCP-001 and the Abrahamic faith, other anomalies were sent to the Gate Guardian, others who were also believed by some to be biblical figures. Experiments Foxtrot and Gamma involved sending SCP-076-2, also known as Abel, and SCP-073, also known as Cain, to interact with SCP-001. During the former experiment, Abel refused to cooperate, despite having been given no details about what the mission would entail. Meanwhile, Cain did approach the Gate Guardian, which resulted in strange changes to the symbol on his forehead. The events that followed are classified. It was thought that these were the only experiments related to SCP-001, and any further tests involving the anomaly were suspended at the order of the administrator themselves. But there was one additional experiment conducted not long after the others, one that bore such catastrophic findings that it has been since hidden from all SCP Foundation records. Experiment Hello. Presumably since his discovery, SCP-343 has been colloquially referred to as God by the staff of the SCP Foundation. The anomalous humanoid showed a level of reality warping abilities that were unparalleled, even amongst other highly powerful SCPs. Despite his seemingly limitless powers, SCP-343 remains contained within his chamber for one simple reason: he allows it. Time and again, he has demonstrated the ability to leave at will, effortlessly bypassing any security measures the Foundation has in place. His continued cooperation is not a matter of containment, it's a choice, and one the Foundation is powerless to influence. Due to SCP-343's apparently harmless nature, Foundation personnel were permitted to speak with him at any point. Initially, those with Level 3 clearance or lower were denied access to the anomalous man. However, lapses in security protocols allowed some guards to grant staff members unsanctioned access to SCP-343's chamber. These staff, drawn by curiosity or seeking a unique opportunity, often engaged with him in conversations under the guise of keeping him company. The O5 Council would later approve a request from the head researcher assigned to SCP-343, one Dr. Beck, to allow any Site-17 staff to speak with SCP-343, given he was noted to improve staff morale. While SCP-343 is known to have a generally friendly demeanor, the Foundation is somewhat compelled to do whatever he asks of them. The alternative is to run the risk of the reality-warping entity imposing his will on them, or manipulating concepts in order to get his way. Dealing with an entity capable of altering reality on a whim is already an existential threat. However, the situation becomes even more precarious due to the Foundation's secrecy. They withhold significant information about their morally questionable actions from SCP-343. This decision is rooted in a deep fear of souring their otherwise stable and amicable relationship, and facing the potential consequences of being erased from existence. When the Foundation approached SCP-343 for Experiment Hello, he was more than happy to oblige them with their further testing related to the Gate Guardian. Having been transported to the area surrounding the eponymous gate, those observing the interaction watched with a mixture of uncertain apprehension and eager anticipation. Many were expecting some recognition between SCP-001 and SCP-343, given their theorized biblical link. And sure enough, the Gate Guardian did seem to recognize SCP-343. but didn't seem pleased to see him. When SCP-343 approached the gate guardian issued a directive other than forget. The first recorded instance of this since the encounter with Aaron Siegel. The Guardian's psychic voice could be heard not just by the anomalous reality warper, but by everyone in the surrounding area. It stated one word, not a command, but a condemnation: deceiver. SCP-343 seemed unfazed by this, and continued his approach toward the Guardian, passing into the 1 kilometer radius around the gate that triggers the entity to attack. SCP-001 made a strike with its sword. This occurs at a speed that is imperceptible to the human eye, making it look like the Gate Guardian is barely moving. What could be seen was the immediate aftermath of SCP-343 being sent careening towards a nearby mountain, the collision causing it to crack and crumble. However, SCP-343 emerged from the rubble unharmed, disappearing from the fallen mountain and reappearing before the Gate Guardian. Once again moving faster than anyone could see, SCP-001 swung its flaming sword, bringing the burning blade sweeping down on SCP-343, only for the weapon to be blocked. SCP-343 had caught the blade effortlessly in one hand, stopping the hyper-fast movements of SCP-001. For the first time, Foundation staff could see the Gate Guardian in a position other than its usual stance. It was caught mid-movement with both hands around the hilt of its weapon, while SCP-343 blocked it. It shouldn't have been possible. SCP-001's sword burned at temperatures that rivaled the sun itself, and could obliterate any living matter, literally incinerating it completely at a subatomic level. The shock only worsened when SCP-343 pulled the sword from the Gate Guardian's hands, hoisting the weapon with ease, despite it being several hundred feet taller than him. Turning it around, SCP-343 plunged the blade through the heart of the Guardian, while the Foundation personnel at Site-0 watched in abject horror. They had assumed, wrongly it seemed, that SCP-001 was a subordinate or a servant of SCP-343. They thought the angelic anomaly would regard the reality warper with reverence, not attack him as some kind of hostile fraudster. But you see, not everyone is convinced that SCP-343 really is God. Dr. Beck, the Foundation doctor assigned to SCP-343, grew suspicious of the anomalous man. Beck even suspected that he had malicious intentions and may have been deceiving the Foundation for decades. He believed that SCP-343 was so open to receiving visitors, not because he wanted the company, but because he intended to brainwash the Foundation for some own unknowable purpose. In order to investigate further, Dr. Beck requested all personnel who had visited SCP-343 to subject themselves to an interview about their reasons. However, his official requests keep going missing, and Dr. Beck went to confront SCP-343 directly. He disappeared shortly afterwards, not just from Site-17, but from existence. Nobody at the Foundation ever remembered working with him, with the inference being that SCP-343 was in some way responsible. All of Dr. Beck's findings were heavily redacted or removed from the SCP database. It appears that his attempts to expose SCP-343's deceptions led to him being erased from reality. The Gate Guardian seemed to confirm what Dr. Beck had long suspected, that SCP-343 wasn't actually God, nor did he create the universe as he often claims. For a brief moment, the Foundation personnel watching could see, clear as day, SCP-343 stabbing the Guardian through the heart, revealing himself perhaps for the first time in eons. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash of light that seemed to erupt from SCP-343, engulfing the Gate Guardian. When everyone's vision returned, everything had reverted back to the way it had been at the start of the test. The Gate Guardian stood with its head bowed. SCP-343 was more than a kilometer away and walking towards SCP-001. Even the crumbled mountain in the distance had seemingly rebuilt itself. This time, when the voice of the Gate Guardian spoke, reaching into everyone's minds as it had before, it uttered a different word: Father. Shortly after the dust had settled, the administrator, the shadowy figurehead of the entire SCP Foundation, issued an executive order, hereby prohibiting any further experiments being carried out involving SCP-001. No other anomalies were to be exposed to the Gate Guardian, and its power would no longer be used to attempt to dispose of existing dangerous SCPs. Given what was learned and later unlearned about SCP-343 during the course of Experiment Hello, the administrator thought it pertinent to wipe any and all references to this incident from Foundation records. As far as history will tell it, there was no Experiment Hello. Perhaps SCP-343 really is God. At least, that's what he would have you believe. Now go check out SCP-343 God vs. Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls, and Insane SCP-001 Fight Gate Guardian vs. Scarlet King for more.